welcome to my channel. My name is Martine, and if you are new here, I do videos on Vedic astrology mainly, but also with some tropical insights, and I focus on both relationship and natal astrology. And if you like this video and you would like to hear more content from me, please like, subscribe, hit the notifications bell to see when I will post a new video. And also, if you're interested in a personal consultation, I do consultations on a wide variety of topics. Please check out the video description. I will leave my contact information there. Thank you. So today's video is going to be a bit of a free rant because I had made a list of topics to cover, but I couldn't for the life of me find it because I started writing it like about a week and a half ago. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I can talk about the main things without the list, but I'm probably going to ramble a little bit more, so bear with. So this topic is going to be about celibacy. Actually, not celibacy, but more specifically things like asexuality or the lack of interest in romance. And yeah, basically, first of all, I want to, because, this idea came up to me because, I'm making all these videos about relationships and stuff, but the truth is that people need to understand that for some people, relationships are not supposed to be the primary focus in their lives, okay? It is more rare, but it happens for both genders to see, some people have a more spiritual path, for instance, or they have to focus on learning or whatever. And relationships either take a back burner or like they take the background of their lives, or they completely have no interest in relationships, okay? They do not care for relationships at all. So how do you see this in a chart where obviously, once again, there are a wide variety of combinations that could show, and just to be specific, I'm talking mainly about people who do not have an interest in relationships, okay? So there's a, first of all, so let's break it down. There are a number of reasons why a person may not be in a relationship. Sometimes a person is not in a relationship because of karma. So there you will see things like delay in marriage. Like I made a video on this. You can search for it in my relationship astrology playlist, I think, or in my partner in the natal chart archetype. I did a video on delay in marriage, and if you have a lot of these delay in marriage placements, your karma is basically to get married late in life or to have relationships late in life. You hear these stories of people who are like, single until they were 55 and then they got married. And they stay married until they were 105. That's usually because of some karma. Like they either have to wait for a very specific person that they have had a karmic debt to, or like they have to pay off a karmic debt, and they also have to pay off probably a karmic debt with respect to relationships. Like usually people who want a relationship but they can't get one. And this is kind of hard to swallow for a lot of people, but it's usually because of bad karma in a previous life. So it's either like, for instance, let's say you were a man in a past life and you abandoned your bride on the day of the wedding. Chances are you're going to come back as someone who suffers because you can't get a person or a partner. Or all kinds of stories like this, or it could be like you, on the other hand, could be bad karma in the idea that, in the sense that you get married and the partner is abusive. And see, just before I continue further, like a lot of the reasons that I make these videos is also to just raise awareness. Like I see all these ignorant, hateful comments online about people who do not believe in, in homosexuality, like people who do not believe in asexuality, people who think that women should be sold into marriage because men have some kind of divine right. I see all these disgusting, ignorant comments online, and I think to myself, like, what the hell is wrong with these people, And if everybody would know astrology the way that I know it, they would realize how ignorant and how stupid they sound, okay? And this is, in my humble opinion, one of the reasons why astrology deserves to be paid attention to, because it really pinpoints the fact that nobody has, like, that there are no two identical people in this world. So everybody has a certain lesson to learn. You cannot, there is no such thing as a one size fits for all. And this is something that we're all going to learn by force if necessary in the age of Aquarius. And the reason I say by force is not because I'm going to threaten you into it. It's because reality is going to threaten us. It's going to bully us into submission. Okay. And that's the reality. The reality is that there is no one size fits for all. You cannot come up with a law that says all women should be married by 25, because it's not going to happen. Some women have a karma to be married at 50. Some women have a karma to stay single. Some women are meant to devote their lives to a spiritual practice. And these could be women who look like Angelina Jolie. And it's not up to you to say that she's wasting her life because you think she's attractive and she would be better off being your wife. Like, you're not the one, you're not the creator. The creator gets to decide what this woman has to do with her life, okay? And everybody's born with a purpose, and it is a huge bad karma to try to impose your will on someone else. If you actively detract from someone else's destiny, that is massive bad karma. And again, you may not believe in karma, but I've seen things in my life that are, there is no doubt in my mind that karma is very much real. And it will come to get you in this life or the next. Like, pretty much think of karma like Maximus from The Gladiator. Anyway, the reason I mentioned this, and not just with respect to, I just recently came across a post about this, like, chauvinistic BS about, why women don't get married, that women should be forced into marriage, which is ridiculous. Yes, women nowadays don't get married because they have the choice not to get married, okay? It's as simple as that. It's not because they were so happy to be married in the past. Let's not forget that a lot of women were forced against their will or by circumstance because they didn't have the option to support themselves financially. Therefore, most of them would give up and just get married. I have women in my own family who have done this, so I'm not just talking out of my butt here. But anyway, I digress. The reason I wanted to make this video is because, yes, asexuality is real. Again, I've heard, like, just a while ago, I came across this channel of this woman who was talking about how she was asexual, and she actually, because she was very pretty and she had a lot of unwanted attention, she just decided to get a sex change operation because she thought that being a man would be easier. And to me, that was like, and the whole video was actually about how she had changed to a male and then she was changing back to a woman. And I thought that was like heartbreaking. Like the fact that women feel like they have to mutilate themselves to just be allowed to be who they are. I mean, it's just mind-boggling that this nonsense is happening in the 21st century, to be honest. Like, I mean, whatever. And yes, asexuality is real, okay? There are people who don't have a sex drive or have very little sex drives, okay? This is why some people, for them, being single is not a big deal. Or it's not a big deal when it comes to sex, okay? It may be still that they want companionship or they could be still romantic, but they don't have much of a sex drive. And yes, this is real, okay? It's not an imaginary thing. It's not always because the person has some kind of trauma connected to this. This is a physiological thing, and usually you can see it in the chart. Now, I will be truthful, like I'm not 100% an expert on this topic, and I'm pretty sure that there are a lot of things that I don't know. Then there are also some things that I won't get into because they're really complicated and I don't want to get into them in a short video. But there are a few things that I can tell you, patterns that I have noticed that tend to show if a person has a low sex drive or there are this other situation, there are other categories of people where they may have a sex drive, but they consciously choose to stay celibate. So this is where you have people who practice like Tantra, or they don't have to practice Tantra, they just practice celibacy because they focus their energy on something else, you know? And again, you can see this stuff, okay? For example, I mentioned this, I'm pretty sure, in previous videos. If you see Venus in a Dustana house. Dustana houses are, well, to a lesser extent, the 8th house, but especially if you see Venus in the 6th house. Okay, Venus in the 6th house, and or Venus in Pisces, Virgo, okay? These will tend to have a little bit lower sex drive than usual, okay? Why? Because the 6th house and the 12th to some extent could also be true, although the 12th can go either way, okay? It depends on a lot of things. But especially Venus in the 6th house tends to show lower sex drive, especially in women, especially in the Navamsha. Okay, because Navamsha is the house of marriage and has to do more with, you know, like physical relations and intimacy and all this stuff. So Venus in the 6th house tends to show a lower sex drive. To a lesser extent, a little bit Venus in the 8th and in the 12th houses could also show a little bit of a lower sex drive, okay? In Venus in Virgo, because it's debilitated, Venus in Pisces, ironically, because it's exalted, but exaltation means that these people are actually looking for a very spiritual connection. So it's not necessarily that they are asexual, but they're going to be so picky that they might as well be asexual. Like, basically, these are people who are waiting for, like, the perfect union, okay, a perfect romantic connection and stuff like that, especially in Revati Nakshatra. Another thing is, for instance, homosexuality sometimes can be shown by Saturn in the 11th house in the Navamsha. That's another thing I've noticed multiple times. Not always. You have to see, you know, a bunch of things together. But, you know, this is not about asexuality necessarily, but, you know, unusual sexualities, okay, let's say. But this is another thing. Mercury and Saturn are the most asexual planets. So when you see a lot of Mercury and Saturn connected to the romance planets, or the partner dispositors, or the planets that show sex drive, again, could show a very low interest in physical activities. For instance, Mars conjunct Saturn. That's a perfect example. Why? Because Saturn is about duty, responsibility, hard work, and all this stuff. It's not always going to be like on the one side, it could show a repressed sexuality. On the other hand, it could just show that this person uses all their sexual energy in practical endeavors. So they could be very ambitious and very, you know, driven to succeed, and all their energy is going towards that area, and they don't really care that much for relations and romance and all that stuff. Another thing that I've noticed, women with Mars in the 10th house, you would think, again, but for similar reasons as the connection between Mars and Saturn. Why? Because the 10th house is, first of all, it is ruled by Saturn. So it's again connected to duty to society, social status and all that. And Mars shows where you direct all your energy. But Mars also shows the sexual energy. So it's the energy of the root chakra. And that energy being placed in the 10th house shows that this person will be very ambitious, and all their energy will be directed towards the career. I've known a woman once about 10 years ago who back then, I mean, she was like drop dead gorgeous. She was a Marilyn Monroe lookalike, and she was still a virgin in her, like, I think mid 30s or something, and she was very driven career-wise, and she had Mars in the 10th house. I remember that stood out to me because she actually, I don't remember what else she had in her chart. I'm pretty sure she probably had some like damaged moon situation or something, because she said that she had a pretty rough upbringing and, you know, a lot of trauma potentially as well. And she was very driven career-wise. Like, she was, you know, among her family, like, the only one who had a college degree, and she was, like, a chemist or something. And she was, you know, very ambitious professionally. And that's something that you see a lot of the times, actually, because Mars in the 10th house puts all your, like, physical energy into your career or something practical that you want to achieve, not necessarily a career. Could be just social status, sometimes could be properties or whatever, but it's directed towards like a higher goal, so to speak. Another thing you want to look for when it comes to, and another thing, borderline on asexuality. Also, like I mentioned, placements in Purva Ashadha, for instance, tend to show a person who could be celibate for long periods of time, usually self-imposed. It could be for moral reasons, or it could be because for whatever reasons. Sometimes it could even be because this person is obsessed with cleanliness, so they have like high level of disgust, as Peterson would say. Like, I mean Jordan Peterson, or as the West calls him, the Messiah. They have high levels of disgust, really, with Purva Shada. So this again could show a person who's kind of like, they don't really, they're not very interested in intimate relations, especially for, like, they could go through periods of time when they explore their sensuality, but they could just as easily just shut down, like within, like a switch. They can will their way out of having a sex drive. Another thing is, like I wanted to say, Ketu in the 9th house of the Navamsha tends to show a person who is very picky and very devoted to a spiritual path. So this person will not, when it comes to marriage or when it comes to a potential romantic partner, they will want a person who will support their path. Okay, so this is a person who's very focused on spirituality, or their vision or something. I think Einstein, if I remember correctly, had this placement. Einstein was married, and I'm pretty sure he had a girlfriend, but then he was a man, so men were just used to women doing whatever they wanted anyway. So it wasn't that hard for a man to find a partner. At the very least, he could get a partner who would just shut up and do whatever he wanted. But basically, especially if you have a woman with Ketu in the 9th house of the Navamsha, this shows women who are very picky. Like, very, very picky. Even among women, they're very, very picky. Like, whereas a woman, some women will be happy to just have a husband who makes a decent job, has a nice car, whatever. These women will not care. They will want to marry Jesus. Like, they want to marry a person, or they want to be with a person who is gonna help them to grow spiritually. So automatically, especially in today's world, that generally makes them very picky. Another thing to bear in mind, so I'm going to switch to the other category, which is lack of interest. Actually, there are two, remember what the two most karmic signs are, Scorpio and Aquarius. These signs, they are interpreted as follows. First of all, Scorpio shows an attitude of a burden. When you see Scorpio in the divisional charts, a person perceives that area on the lagna of a divisional chart. The person will perceive that area as a burden. So if you have the Navamsha lagna in Scorpio, you will think of marriage as a burden. If you have Scorpio lagna on the D7, you will think of relationships as a burden, romantic relationships and children as a burden. Now, automatically, this doesn't mean, and in fact, none of these placements will mean that you will not have a relationship, because once again, this is influence, okay? So you are the person who has the power to make these decisions. The reason I say that, I've known a lot of people with these placements, by the way. So I've seen how they play out. I actually know a woman with Scorpio Navamsha, and she is married, actually. She is married for 40 something years. And at one point, I have heard her say, I wish that I had never gotten married. Like, after a marriage of 40 something years, 3 kids, and she also at some point said that marriage is something interesting that stood out to me. She said something like, marriage is a great, your marriage partner is supposed to help you solve the problems that you wouldn't have had if you never married. And I so laughed, and I remember this because when I did her chart, she had Scorpio on the lagna of the D9 of the Navamsha chart, and I thought, yeah, figures. Yeah, and here's the thing though, this woman in question actually had a pretty hard marriage and a hard time with children. So the question is, like, which came first, the chicken or the egg? Is it a self-fulfilling prophecy, or is it it could be that it's some kind of a karma thing again. So it could be that people with these placements have some karma of having a heavy relationship stuff going on, you know, so they will have more difficult relationships or something. Or, you know, I'm guessing it could be, but sometimes it gets to the point where the person will just anticipate that the marriage is going to be a lot of work, and they're just like, you know what, F it, I'm not gonna, not in this lifetime, you know, I'm postponing it to my next life. Like, or the same thing with Aquarius, the second karmic sign. Aquarius is actually really key for when you want to see a person who's happy being alone. Okay, now to be fair, yes, we are all social animals. We all need some level of social interaction. But people with Aquarius placements, they handle being alone better than the rest of us. Okay, better than most people. Because Aquarius, again, is the sign of the mad genius. These are people who can spend like hours, days, months inside their heads and just concoct ideas and chase their own visions, and which eventually they do want to share with the world, but in the meantime they can have a very solitary personality, you know. And especially when you see Aquarius. Oh, and another thing is that Aquarius, just as much as Scorpio shows burdens, Aquarius shows loss. So, again, there's a question here that to be fair, I'm not 100% sure with this. Like, does it actually imply loss? Or I would tend to think that it doesn't like 100% imply loss. It's more like, the native tends to perceive that area of his or her life as a loss. And it also just shows disinterest. It shows like indifference, because Aquarius, again, is a very individualistic sign. It is the most spiritual sign, and again, so again, people who are very spiritual are going to prioritize their, again, a vision, career, you know, their spiritual practices, whatever it is, their hobbies, and they're not going to prioritize relationships and relations and romance and all that stuff. And especially if you see Aquarius on the Lagna of the D9, I've seen this a lot of the times. It shows lack of interest in marriage. I think I mentioned this before, I knew a guy in college who actually said to me, like, my dream is to never get married and like just move into a house with my homies. Like, when I get old, I just want to be with my friends. And guess what? He had Aquarius on the Navamsha Lagna. And again, I'm not saying that this is how they're all gonna be, or like everyone who has this placement. You have to also look at more specific placements. But if you see a lot of Aquarius activity going on in the D1, in the D9, in the D7, chances are that this person will not mind being alone for long periods of time. Again, I'm not saying that they're meant to be alone. I'm saying that most likely they're not going to be in a hurry to tie the knot or get married. And I say this because I've seen this a lot in relationships. I've had people with who came for relationship consultations, and they were like, you know, I'm with this person and they're not proposing, and you know, like, we've been together for a long time, and then when I look at the chart, I see Aquarius on the Lagna of the D9. I'm like, oh, and like, like, how do I break this to you? And look, and again, I'm not saying that, you know, it's like this person is not going to propose or anything, but obviously that's why you come for a consultation, so that I can give you the insights on how to handle these people. But you have to be very careful, because these people value their freedom a great deal, so they will not want to feel you know, like they have to sacrifice themselves, their individuality at all for the relationship. So it's up to you if you want to tolerate that or not. And again, for women, especially if you see the moon in Aquarius in the D9, this shows, again, a woman who, again, this doesn't say anything for like sex drive or anything, but it shows that this woman is comfortable being alone in solitude for long periods of time. And it also just shows a person who's very independent and independent-minded, because the moon is the mind, okay? And again, if you see Aquarius on the D7 Lagna, or the Saptamsha Lagna, it could show a person who has no interest in children, no interest in romance, even. or not no interest, but very little, you know, compared to the average person, let's say. And again, you might think like, why am I even telling you this stuff? Like, some of y'all might be depressed a little bit right now, but I feel like this is important stuff to share because, you know, it helps to understand that every person has a different path. And especially if you're in a relationship or you're interested with someone, to have a relationship with someone, you need to figure out what their priorities are and what they need to be happy, because that's how you're going to make the relationship work, if you have any chance of making it work to begin with. And you can know, like, for instance, if I see a person who's a Mongolic, or person who has a strong Mars, and a person who has a debilitated Venus, I know that these people are most likely not going to be happy together, because one person is going to have a really high need for physical intimacy, the other person is going to have a really low need for physical intimacy. Especially if I also see that the person with a debilitated Venus has a lot of Aquarius in the D9 or the D7 chart, okay? And another thing, right, I should have also mentioned this, Saturn in the 5th house of the D1 shows a person who, or even in the Navamsha, you know, Saturn aspect in the 5th house from the Navamsha, because 5th house is the games, the lovemaking, to some extent the lovemaking, but it's you know, the fun, the passion, the romance, and all that. So this tends to show, again, a person who just doesn't have that much interest, you know, in romance and all that stuff. Or this is a person who is only interested in very serious, really serious relationships, like, you know, like Corpse Bride. Like, till death do us part, literally, kind of serious relationships, you know. Yeah. So this is pretty much it. I mean, I'm pretty sure, I wanted to cover the Aquarius issue and the Scorpio issue and the Ascendant. Again, like I mentioned, also Scorpio on the D7 Lagna could show that the person sees children and romance as a burden. So they will not even start a relationship because they think, this is too much work. Of course, you also have to see what other things they have going on to see their motivation and all this stuff. Yeah, pretty much. I think this is pretty much what I covered. Oh, no, there's one more thing. How could I forget? Right. Thank God I remembered this in time. Like, there is something called the Kemdrum Yoga, which is, basically means that there are no planets supporting the moon. So if you look at the moon in the D1 chart, if you look at the moon in the D1 chart and you have no planets in the house before and after the house that the moon sits in, so if you have moon in the 1st house and you have no planets in the 12th house, no planets in the 2nd house, this is a Kemdrum Yoga. And ideally to have a full, because it's kind of like, it's on a spectrum, quote unquote. There is a spectrum of Kemdrum Yoga, and the full Kemdrum Yoga 100% means there are no planets. Not only are there no planets in the house before and after the moon, but there are no planets with the moon, conjunct the moon in the same house, and there are also no planets in the Kendra houses, the 1st, the 4th, the 7th, and the 10th. Okay, what this shows is this person is extremely introverted. Of course, again, it's on a spectrum, quote unquote. So a person who has the full Kemdrum Yoga, this is a person who is very introverted, like extremely introverted. And these are people who will find it difficult sometimes to relate to others. I'm not going to say like autistic. I'm not going to throw words there, but it could be like, I don't know. It would be interesting, actually. I would have to like look for a bunch of certified Asperger's and autism people who and check out their moon situation. I actually have a level of this. I'm going to say this. I have a light level of Kemdrum Yoga, and I am extremely introverted. So I can testify 100%. I'm pretty sure that if I had like the full thing, I would have like, I also have Aquarius in in the D9. So I speak from experience as well, that I am an extremely introverted person. I actually had 2 bosses ask me if I'm autistic. One boss compared me to a robot. Like, which I found a little bit offensive, but you know, I tried to take it as a compliment. Anyway, but yes, people like these, it's not, again, this is not to say that these people, like, I don't know, hate others or that, but chances are, of course, the more introverted you are, the more weird you are, so there is going to be kind of like a difficulty to have easy, free-flowing interactions, but it's just also just the fact that you're gonna be kind of inside your head. Like, literally what it means is that you, on the plus side, it means that you are not as influenced by the noise of the outside world. So on the plus side, it could be good for your thinking, for your judgment and all that, but on the dark side, it can show difficulties relating. So this is another thing to take into account. So obviously, once again, since this is a game of nuances, you have to look at everything. Like, the more of these things you see, the more likely it is that this person is content being alone. And once again, this doesn't mean that the person is meant to stay alone or that they're gonna be a horrible partner, but you when it comes to relationships, just general rule of thumb is that you have to study the animal. You have to study the nature of the animal, you know, kind of like how the way you study when you get a pet. You know, it's like when you get a cat, you study the nature of the cat, right? You understand that cats need to climb stuff, they are independent, they will chase imaginary figures around the house at midnight. You need to understand, you know, that they have a certain nature and they have certain needs. And it's the same thing in relationships. If you want to make something work, you have to study the animal. You have to study, like, what this person, what makes them happy, what their habits are, their hobbies are. You know, I don't mean like go through their trash like in like the copycat killer. But you know what I mean by study. I don't mean like stalk them. I mean study. Okay? You need to study the animal and figure out what it is that they need to be happy, and that would be the first step to getting a relationship. First of all, to figure out if you're compatible with this person, if you're able to adjust according to their needs, or if it would be too much of a sacrifice. But yes, I think this is valuable information again in terms of relationships of all kind, actually, but especially with regards to romantic relationships. So again, this has been it. I hope you have enjoyed it, and once again, if you have, please like, subscribe, hit the notifications bell, and also thank you for watching the ads, and please continue to do so to support my channel for free, and please give me any feedback in the comment section, any feedback that you want to give. And once again, if you're interested in a personal consultation, I do consultations on a wide variety of topics. Please check out the video description. I will leave my contact information there. Thank you.